Hello. I want to talk a little bit about your assignment this week. And basically your assignment is going to be beginning to write chapter 1. And chapter 1 is the chapter that defines the whole reason for your study and eventually will state specifically your research questions, your hypothesis, your definitions in order for people to understand your hypothesis. But we're going to focus on the first two sections of the chapter, which are statement of the problem and purpose of the study. We're not going to be writing the whole thing this time. So why do we need a statement of the problem? I found this great quote from somebody who was studying statements of the problems in research articles that said that basically the components of a research article or a thesis. Remember how I've had you read a couple of research articles in the first week or two that show, in order to look at the elements that are similar between what we're going to need in the thesis and what you're going to need in what appears in a research article. So the components of a research article or thesis work together in a manner similar to those of a long span structure, such as a bridge. Critical to the strength and flexibility of the bridge is the use of some sort of truss. Such is the role of the problem statement in research writings, providing structural strength to the presentation of argument, method, and analysis. So this is the bones of your thesis. This is going to be what you lay everything on, and it will provide the support. So without the statement of the problem that gives us an overall reason for why we're going to do this, the research doesn't stand up as well. So what you need to think about, and we talked about this when I discussed broad topics with you when I met with you individually, and you're beginning to do your literature review, so you begin to bring this into focus even a little bit more. What motivated you when you decided on your topic? What were the issues, theories, or observations that prompted you to choose this as your topic? It may have been a debate in the field. So conducting research in order to determine how best to cope with a practical problem in the classroom. You wanted to change something and see if it worked better. You wanted to try a new technique because you'd read about it and you want to see if it is making a difference. So this is one way you may have come to it. Some people also come to their statements of the problem through looking at competing theories. A theory of instruction, how do they work in real life? Which theory explains students' performance better? How can we change instruction to match a theoretical perspective? Probably more of you are going to be looking at debates in the field, although we're still going to talk a little bit about the theoretical background of the debates, but that's not for right now. So the statement of the problem will really look at a big picture. And when you're looking at this big picture and building up your raison d'etre for your thesis and your research, you need to include a couple of things and think about this while you're writing. And one of the reasons that you start writing and something that you're going to do throughout your thesis is writing is thinking. So as you're writing out, you may not feel ready to do both sections of this chapter, but you'll find as you write out these sections of the chapter that you start thinking about them in a different way. So it's another way to continue to formulate your statement of the problem and purpose of the study as you're doing your lit review. They'll work together in conjunction and one will inform the other. So what you need when you're writing your statement of the problem is to support your statements that you include. So if you say, for example, I want to investigate makerspaces because they are becoming popular in libraries, and I need to understand how they will support learning. you need to not just say they're becoming popular in libraries, but find a citation, some article. It does not have to be a full-fledged research article. It can be from one of your research articles if you want, but we need to back up whatever statements you're making within your statement of the problem with citations. And I've given you 2 sample statements of the problems and purpose of the studies to look at and read. And you'll see the math one, I remember that one because I've read it more recently, has supporting citations, where they got information from, how they came to these conclusions, what's backing up this. You can't just write from, some of it could be what you've observed in the classroom. You can go from the bigger to the, in my school kind of thing, but you still need the bigger truss to support the bridge. And that truss will be built of citations, although you don't need to use a ton of them here. Also, objective language, no personal pronouns. You're writing this is a formal writing. You can talk in maybe one paragraph about a personal experience, but still do it in professional language. And it should have a logical flow from one paragraph, and this should be your whole thesis. Some of it's more highly constructed than others. When you're writing your results, there's not much room for beauty of language, although I've seen some better written than others. Here you have a little more leeway to write so that it flows, and then what you need it to flow, your statement of the problem needs to flow into your purpose of the study. So your statement of the problem is your big picture. And no, these are not my dogs, but the statement of the problem is a big picture. Now with the purpose of the study, you need to zoom in. So within the context of the big problem, what part of it will you study? You can't study everything. If we're looking at makerspaces, I can't have a study of every purpose that the makerspace serves, everything it's going to do good and well for my students, etc. I have to choose a particular part that I'm going to study. So in sample 1, the statement of the problem has to do with the state of math education and goes on about support, has all her supporting statements there. And then the purpose of the study is to examine the effect of using manipulative materials, etc. So particularly this purpose of the study may change as you continue to do your lit review, because you're zooming in so much that you may decide you're going to zoom in a slightly different direction. But it's a place to start to put it into your assignment 3. I'd like you to do this week, but if you're not ready to if you need more time to read a little more literature, I'm not going to be like real strict about getting this assignment in next week this time, so don't worry about that. As you see in the samples, the purpose of the study is not long, 1 or 2 paragraphs, and that will in turn lead to the hypothesis. And you can see by the structure of the purpose of the study, the way it's written, that it's giving you a short overview of what you're basically going to do in this study. Also needs to be narrow enough that it can be something that can be investigated. We've already talked about, with each of you, I think I've talked a little bit about how to measure what you want to study, and we'll talk more about it as we go along. So you need to, as you're writing it, you need to think about whether or not the stated purpose of your study is narrow enough to address in a practical research design in which you'll really collect some kind of data. And I think most of you are thinking in that, you were thinking along that vein. And when we finish this, when we finish the assignment 3, and I've gotten a chance to take a look at it, I think we'll have another one-on-one meeting, because then by then you will have done a little more of your lit review, we'll have done this, and we can continue we can start talking about your hypothesis from there. So for your assignment 3, read the examples that are provided in this week's tab. Then write the problem statement and purpose of study. You can write them in a separate Word document and post them after they're revised. You can cut and paste them into the template that I provided last week, or if you want to go ahead and start working in that template, that's fine too. And as I said, after I've reviewed these, we'll meet again. If you feel like you need to meet sooner, if you're feeling like you're, banging your head against a wall or drifting on the sea, let me know, and we can certainly set up a meeting before then. So that's great, and I look forward to reading your assignments. Thanks.